recorded that. So section 3.5 of the FIP, third edition, is entitled Beyond Perception. And this is the beginning of this three-part series that we'll do. Noel, you had a comment?
Yes. What's Maslow's definition of a true self?
So we're not going to explore that because that's outside of what's provided here by the course. But suffice it to say, Maslow had great insights. And he realized, so broadly speaking, Noel, it would be the self that lies beyond the self-actualized individual.
Yeah.
Self-actualized individual in Maslow would be the highest of human attainment. Yeah. The true self, the transcendent self, is beyond that. And so it was largely unexplored because Maslow didn't really come out with this until the final years of his life. And so it was not, did not occupy a great deal of his writing and research. But we'll go on to our reading. David Welton today has volunteered to be our reader. And we thank you, David, for your help with this. You're muted, David.
Thank you. 5. Beyond perception. I have said that the abilities you possess are only shadows of your real strength, and that perception, which is inherently judgmental, was introduced only after the separation. No one has been sure of anything since. I have also made it clear that the resurrection was the means for the return to knowledge, which was accomplished by the union of my will with the Father's. Mm-hmm. We now establish a distinction that will clarify some of our subsequent statements.
Okay, so the abilities you now possess at the beginning of the hallway and along the journey are only shadows of the strength of your true self that you find at the end of the hallway, that you will experience beyond perception. So what the macro theme here is you really don't know who you are. And the hidden great secret is using perception. You cannot know what you truly are because perception is unable to encompass the true self, the transcendent self. Perception is only a post-separation device for attempting to understand. Before the separation, there was no perception. And so it's only beyond perception that you can truly know yourself. Now, there's a little caveat. You can still have glimpses of your true self before that. Partial glimpses, brief moments where it flashes across your mind before perception rushes in to fill that space. I'm jumping ahead right now, but for a full consciousness of your true self is required it requires you go beyond perception. And until then, the abilities you possess are really just shadows of your real self. They are not accurate reflections of what you were created as. So this should have your attention by now. David, can you read that last sentence from the previous paragraph once more? We can now establish.
We can now establish a distinction that will clarify some of our subsequent statements.
Go ahead. Continue.
2. Since the separation, the words create and make have become confused. When you make something, you do so out of a specific sense of lack or need. Anything made for a specific purpose has no true generalizability. When you make something to fill a perceived lack, you are tacitly implying that you believe in separation. The ego has invented many ingenious thought systems for this purpose. None of them is creative. Inventiveness is wasted effort, even in its most ingenious form. The highly specific nature of invention is not worthy of the abstract creativity of God's creations.
Mm-hmm. So let's focus on the full-time activity. The ego has invented many ingenious thought systems that would appear in your mind as ways of filling your mind, occupying your attention as a component of the separation, of keeping you busy. In our image of the hallway, the ego provides many doors that you can open and explore and spend years of your life occupied with. And many of them are ingenious. They're fascinating. And that's the whole intent, is to keep you occupied and fascinated with these ego inventions. So, and this takes many forms, but we're going to focus on today the chief form that you need to be concerned about. And that is the ego making an image of you. Let's be clear what we mean. We mean when you reflect on yourself, your concept of who you are, your life, and its purpose, that narrative, that story is made based on your past and the language and your experiences that you've had. The ego wants to make that, and you do, it is inherent that you believe that that's true. The ego is ingenious in helping you to believe that that is the flat out truth about yourself. And we're calling this the great lie. The way you perceive yourself is the great lie. It was made here on earth since you've been born, based on experiences that you've had and the story you tell yourself. And all that occupies your attention such that your true self remains unknown to you because your mind is occupied with a different notion. So when we use the word make, it's used in the context of things made up here in time and space under an assumption of confusion and not being clear, not being informed by the Holy Spirit or guided by Spirit in any way. So we make up a narrative to replace that. And the one that I want everyone here to not miss, because it's in the next two sections as well, is the narrative you make up about yourself. And we will submit again and again that you refer to that every hour of your life. And the story, the way you think of yourself, you keep self-referencing in all your relationships and your decisions of what to do with yourself, and the goals that you set for yourself are all formulated in reference to the way you believe you are, what you believe about yourself. And so it is the cornerstone, the starting point for your entire thought system. And it's based on a lie. It's based on a form of judgment that that we will explore more deeply here. David, you don't have to read the number of the paragraph and just jump into the next paragraph.
Thank you. Knowing, as we have already observed, does not lead to doing. The confusion between your real creation and what you have made of yourself is so profound that it has become literally impossible for you to know anything. Knowledge is always stable, and it is quite evident that you are not. Nevertheless, you are perfectly stable as God created you. In this sense, when your behavior is unstable, you are disagreeing with God's idea of your creation. You can do this if you choose, but you would hardly want to do it if you were in your right mind.
Mm-hmm. So the message that I've been communicating is not my own. It comes right from here. The confusion between your real creation, your true self created by the Creator, and what you have made of yourself here in time, the story you tell about yourself, the confusion is so profound that it literally becomes impossible for you to know. It becomes impossible for you to share in knowledge. Become preoccupied instead with what you have made of yourself and of your time here on earth. And so it's a distinction between what is knowable and knowledge. We will refer to knowledge as the perfect truth that exists in eternity, that never changes because it is absolutely true for all time, all places, and all people. That's what we mean by knowledge. So it's impossible for you to know these things while your mind is preoccupied with image making based on your ego. And that results in behavior that is unstable. Because, as we said, you reference your self-concept before you do anything, before you make any choices. And since your self-concept is unstable, the behavior that follows from it becomes unstable. And what do you mean by unstable? We mean fear-based, guilt-based, really not a reflection of your higher self, but really a reaction formation to a unstable, anxious view of life. All right, so for those of you who've been with Course in Miracles here, here's a quiz. No, from the first line. Knowing, as we have already observed, does not lead to doing. Why? Knowing, and the answer is within A Course in Miracles. You don't need to be ingenious and making up an answer here. The answer is given in the course. Knowing does not lead to doing. Miracles lead to doing, but miracles are not based on knowing. Knowing does not lead to doing. So would anybody like to take a stab at that? Julie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, knowing, as far as I can understand it, is a place of perfect knowing. I mean, it's a situation where nothing needs to be done. There's nothing left to do except be.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Nothing, there's nothing to do. What all doing is based on something needs to be done,
Right.
something's lacking or missing. Doing is a reflection of a perception based on a sense of things are not so great. We've got to do something to make them better. Noel?
I think knowing is the highest, I want to say perception, but that's the wrong word.
Right.
The highest place of certainty reflecting the Holy Spirit. So there's a sense of certainty. To me, there's a sense always of guidance and looking towards Holy Spirit. I must admit I'm a little confused about doing from the guidance versus doing from the ego. To do from guidance, it seems to me, carries a sense of peace and again certainty, and not what you were saying before, the sense of fear, guilt, doubt. Would you comment on?
Yeah, you've discerned that correctly, Noel. There's doing from fear and there's doing from guidance, and they are not the same. Miracles are doing from guidance. And this whole course is to help us escape from doing from fear and help us become a bit practitioners of doing from guidance. So very much those are different there. Knowing, however, as Julie said, is a state of pure bliss that requires no action. Let's take a few more comments. Heather?
Yeah, I love this. From the Tao, it says, when you come to the place you're doing nothing, then nothing is left undone.
Everything is fulfilled. Yes. Yes. So they talk about that transcendent state. Yes. Very good. Cheryl?
Hi, I missed you guys last week. Yeah, Jonica, you just said pretty much what I was going to say, that it's knowing is faith-based. It's stability, all the things that you said, and then doing is oftentimes fear-based. It's fear of not getting what we want, fear of losing what we have. So I believe that is very fear-based. But again, you mentioned that, so.
Yeah, and we are learning in this program to do under guidance of spirit, to do out of love, to let our heart lead us into doing. But Cheryl, clearly we need to learn to that. That was not something that we do in our unconsciousness. We have to acquire that understanding.
Right, because typically our narratives are based on fear. Again, not having what we want, not getting what we want or losing what we have. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Richie, you had your hand up, Richard?
Hey guys,
Hi.
I feel like when I share, I ought to bring my attorney with me. I'm doing the best to self-express and expose myself, my innermost self at this group. And even though I don't like what's coming out of my mouth, I'm in the healing process. And I'm okay with that. For me, less is more. For example, the other day, someone showed me a picture of someone, an old man who was a little overweight. And I said, who's that? Someone said, that's a spitting image of you. I have this view of myself that I think I look like when I was 15 years old or 17 years old, and it's not that character. But trying to convince myself that that's it. The only way I seem to be dealing with it is taking it to this power. When I'm in that contact with the power, it's you mentioned the word bliss. Just staying in the moment and trying my best. I'm trying to explain a condition, and it's difficult for me to do it. I know what I want to say, but it goes beyond words.
Yes, it does.
And sometimes I don't like the answer. My ego doesn't like the answer. So I'll come up with another maneuver. And then that'll expire, then another one and another one and another one. It's challenging, and it makes me vulnerable.
Right.
It makes me want to look at myself and look how delusional I can be. It's like I'm exposing myself, and I don't like what I see.
Okay.
Sometimes, many times.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
We need to move on, but let's take one or two more comments. Susie?
I don't want to take up time, but I'm very compelled to share this because it's just so apropos. I've been struggling with a decision. What should I do? And it's just absolutely amazing. And I don't think that Heather will mind. I woke up, well, didn't wake up, but I got a text from her this morning, just, of course, not out of it, nowhere, because we have no private thoughts. It's fascinating. Just telling me that she's going to make no decisions by herself today and ask the Holy Spirit for guidance. And, I responded how, I'm struggling with something and I'm not sure what to do. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? And Heather, I hope you don't mind, but I must read the response. The right answer will always bring peace to all concerned. You will also know it is divine, because I was telling her I was struggling with, is it the ego or is it the Holy Spirit's answer, right? You will also know it is divine because you couldn't have thought of this yourself. The ego wants to take credit for any good ideas I might have. I know they are divine when they are beyond what I could ask or think. And first of all, it's right on what we're talking about. Second of all, it's exactly what I needed to hear today. And now I'm on this course, and to hear what Julie just shared, when I know, I'll know, and then I don't have to do anything because I'll just know, and I need do nothing but listen. So there's so much in what happened, and I just felt really compared to share that.
Oh, you're living it, Susie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Final comment, Noelle?
First of all, I want to thank David for the reading. I really appreciate the emphasis that he gives, the various expressions, and the slowness of it really helps me take in the words again. Second, to address this doing thing, in human forms that we are, I can't help but do and want to do.
Right.
So as Susie was saying, and that wonderful advice, ask, 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 And for me, it's not doing nothing, but it's like going with a wave almost, letting the wave carry you of what to do.
I like that metaphor. Yes. The wave, let the wave do the work. Yes, very good. All right. Thank you all for that. We're going to go on. David?
The fundamental question you continually ask yourself cannot properly be directed to yourself at all. You keep asking what it is you are. This implies that the answer is not only one you know, but is also one that is up to you to supply. Yet you cannot perceive yourself correctly. You have no image to be perceived. The word image is always perception related and not a part of knowledge. Images are symbolic and stand for something else. The idea of changing your image recognizes the power of perception, but also implies that there is nothing stable to know.
So please come back to this paragraph again after class, sometime after class, and read it again and let it sink in so that you begin to truly hear the depth of what's been said here. Human beings have this fundamental question that they keep asking, and they ask it of themselves. It's a self-inquiry. What am I? What am I? You don't realize it, but every day, all day long, you're either asking that question or you're assuming you already know. Okay. And it implies that it's up to you to supply the answer because you're asking your own memory, your own mind. What am I? It implies you're the source of the answer. And so that's the ordinary habit that all human beings have done. We're not trying to make people feel guilty about it. We're pointing out that you're looking at the wrong source for that answer. Your guidance is in asking based on what you've learned here in time and space. It's not being guided by Holy Spirit's cosmic consciousness. Therefore, the best you can do is to make up an image of yourself. It's a temporary way of answering the question with a self-concept, a self-image. And I can prove to you that every few years you keep changing your self-image because the one that you had of yourself is no longer adequate, and that you keep changing it. I can assure you that when you were 17 years old, you had a self-image of yourself, and it's not at all like the one that you have of yourself now. And that in fact, if you're working this program, you're going to discard all your old self-images because they're inadequate. The truth is you cannot perceive yourself correctly. Okay, there's a deeper truth here as well. Your spiritual being that is eternal and that knows all creation has no image. It's not physical. it's not something that is perceived. It can only be known. And therefore, you cannot perceive something that can only be known. You can, and if you think it, but you can fill the space with an image of your own making. And this is the error. This is the fundamental confusion that has misled all humanity. So, I mean, nobody should feel bad about this as part of the human error. Therefore, and you've probably encountered or heard about this, that they're actually in the modern era people that are that you can hire. They're image makers. They will make an image of you if you're a politician or maybe someone in the media that's exposed all the time. You can get consultants that'll come in there to help you with your image so that you can, it's an idea of changing your image, and it recognizes that whatever image you come up with is merely a construct. It's merely a notion. It's a temporary illusion of that this is who you are. And what we would do in the Course of Miracles is move beyond all this foolish image making and point you in the direction where you can know your true self, your eternal self, the self that God created you as. So I had one more thought come to me just now, and I hesitate to say it, but this is the truth. The images that you make of yourself, you are never going to love them. That's why you keep discarding the old ones, as because you yourself decided they were inadequate and you were looking for a better one. The images you make of yourself are made based on confusion and uncertainty and a sense of inadequacy. At best, they are props. They are temporary illusions. You will never love that image, but you will most certainly love your true self, the being that was created by love and as an extension of love. That you will love, your true self, but never the image of yourself. And this is not widely recognized outside of A Course in Miracles. Okay, many religions have gotten glimpses of it, but here it is so clear and concise. It draws our attention to it. And so where are we going with this? Well, hang on. We're just still defining the problem. Is that you can't love the image you make of yourself. And the problem that everybody keeps doing is they keep asking of their own intellect, what am I? And believing that it's up to them to provide that answer. We need to no longer be fooled by that process. No, stop being confused. Stop the madness. If you want a concept of yourself, ask the Holy Spirit, who sees you clearly. Stop asking yourself and your neighbors, and stop asking other people. Ask the Holy Spirit. So there are different ways other than the words we were using to try to convey this confusion and this process. Here's one that I like, using the words of the Course. You cannot perceive yourself correctly, your true self. Your soul has no image to be perceived. It is not something that is a part of your optical sensory system. You can't see your soul. So let every image held of everyone be loosened from your mind and swept away. This is forgiveness. Let every image you ever held of anyone be loosened from your mind and swept away. Now, the ego will scream if you elect to do that. The ego wants to cling on to those images, those illusions, as if they were real. But to be free, you have to first clear your mind of all those images. The truth is, you are not an image. And if you side with image making, oh, Susie, here it is. If you side with image making, you're practicing idolatry. You're substituting for something that God created an image of your own cherishing. We call it idolatry. The only what God created is perfect. It's it's immensely satisfying and fulfilling. Substitutes become forms of idolatry. And so stop the madness and be willing to the whole point of this is that to convince you to be glad to let go of the images that you have made of yourself and others, that they hold back our minds and keep them imprisoned. This is the path to freedom, to let them go. Did we say this was easy? I don't think we've said that yet. All right, let's move on. David?
Knowing is not open to interpretation. You may try to interpret meaning, but this is always open to error because it refers to the perception of meaning. Such incongruities are the result of attempts to regard yourself as separated and unseparated at the same time. It is impossible to make so fundamental a confusion without increasing your overall confusion still further. Your mind may have become very ingenious, but as always happens when method and content are separated, it is utilized in a futile attempt to escape from an inescapable impasse. Ingenuity is totally divorced from knowledge because knowledge does not require ingenuity. Ingenious thinking is not the truth that shall set you free, but you are free of the need to engage in it when you are willing to let it go.
So we've said again and again, these first 5 chapters really set the foundation upon which the rest of the Course of Miracles is built. And here you have right in front of you right now, one of the biggest indicators you could ever have, that there is a fundamental confusion that human beings suffer from, and suffer is the right word. It's something that's in the mind that causes us great confusion. And it's a habit that we keep repeating in our mind. It has to do with the way we see ourselves and others. And then that leads to behaviors, as we said before. And your mind is totally bought into it. This is part of the thing. In a way, you could say we are addicts of this way of viewing life through the lens of a little self-concept, through the lens of an ego. We're hooked we have been, what's the word when you are drugged, when your mind is in a daze based on a mistake, and any attempt to escape, I'm sorry, let's read the sentence here. As always, when method and concept, it is utilized, so this situation is utilized in a futile attempt to escape from an inescapable impasse. Now, I really had to focus on what do they mean by the inescapable impasse. So we're talking about a fundamental confusion. We're talking about the way that we think and perceive ourselves and others and the world and life. And it becomes an impasse. It's a prison of the mind, not a physical prison, a prison of conceptualizing yourself and life and the world that has never been true, but because our mind endorses it, it limits us greatly and leads to our suffering. So it's right here. It's a fundamental impasse. Therefore, you cannot be free until you overcome this impasse. And it links. So when we finish reading this section, you can go back and read it again, and then it'll all be obvious what we're talking about. The clues are all there in the paragraphs already read, that you must be willing to sweep away from your mind all these judgments, all these conclusions, and all the self-talk and narrative that goes with it, all the images that you've made of yourself that even you do not love. You must, we're not asking a lot. Surrender the images that even you do not love and that are actually the source of your own unhappiness. Susie?
I just wanted to say that, like, this is just so true. And, you know, you mentioned it's almost like being an addict, and, you know, and you also use the word habit. So, you know, this has become a habit for me my whole life. And exactly what you said in the beginning, you know, there is no answer. Who am I? I think I am a collaboration of all the images I have made. And so if it's a habit, that's why I have to keep coming back and doing the lessons over and over and over again. So I think it would be create healthy, you know, truer habits from the laws of God, because I have just made images from my ego. Anyway, the point what I wanted to say is it's a habit. And that's the undoing of the old thinking. I have to help heal. Why are you shaking your head?
Because there's great, I'm totally agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
It is a habit, and there's great hope because we learned the old habit, and
right,
that is proof that we can learn a new habit.
Right. And I believe that's in the text at the end, and it talks about that a lot. So yeah, I'm just, for myself, if I'm not here, I just fall back into all of my old habits. So this is really great to read again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You should think of this as a habit of thinking about everything. And since we learned that habit, we're going to learn a new habit now. So that's really hopeful. So by the way, some sections will focus more on the problem and framing the problem. Others will focus more on the solution. So we'll understand, especially by the time we get to chapter 6, we begin with the lessons of the Holy Spirit. We start to talk about the keys that are needed to get out of this prison, to get out of this addiction. But first, we have to fully recognize the nature of the addiction. Many people didn't realize that what they were telling themselves about themselves was a fundamental confusion and an inescapable impasse that they must overcome. So that's where we're focused right now. Noel?
I can certainly understand the precept that the images make us unhappy, because for every image of myself that I have, first of all, it falls short of my goals. And second, it's like I want it, but I don't feel that I can reach it, whatever the image is. So it's like a never-ending cycle of unhappiness. And the Course is asking us, like Susie was saying, a habit is, you keep saying it's mind training. Well, it's mind retraining, I think, to let go, kick out those images and just wait for the right ones.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And by the way, kicking out those images, what we want it to be, the Course will teach a gentle process. You cannot fight the images off. Matter of fact, that's the nature of the ego. It wants you to struggle with it and enter into conflict and make it into a battle. What you can do is merely relinquish it as no longer being worth your time and attention, of no meaning and of no value. It's a very gentle, the Holy Spirit teaches a very gentle process. So, Heather?
Yeah, I just keep having the image of like an actor. You know, they step on the stage, they have their image that they're portraying. And then when they step off the stage, they don't think they're still that image. They take off the clothes of whatever that was, it's over, they played the role, and now they're back to who they really are. And I'd like it to be that easy for me to let all those images go, like it's just a play that I had in my past. And I take off that role and it no longer represents me. I'm the person that was way beyond the image.
Yeah, I think that's really a useful metaphor. Very, very useful. Bonnie?
Yeah, at the risk of sounding heretical, the whole mechanism of ego and how it operates, from whence did that originate?
That's a very practical question, Bonnie. Can we take that up at the end of class?
Yes.
I'd be happy to. Probably will end the formal class and we can talk about that.
Okay.
And anybody that wants to sit in on it is welcome to attend. Thank you for that question. All right, let's move on to the role of prayer.
Prayer is a way of asking for something. It is the medium of miracles. But the only meaningful prayer is for forgiveness, because those who have been forgiven have everything. Once forgiveness has been accepted, prayer in the usual sense becomes utterly meaningless. The prayer for forgiveness is nothing more than a request that you may be able to recognize what you already have. In electing perception instead of knowledge, you placed yourself in a position where you could resemble your Father only by perceiving miraculously. you have lost the knowledge that you yourself are a miracle of God. Creation is your source and your only real function.
So in this framework, we once had the knowledge, perfect knowing of ourselves, of all creation, and of the Creator. And in the separation, we lost that knowledge. And then we became fearful and it all hell broke loose. So the Course teaches the way back is first to perceive miraculously, to utilize our skills at perception, but to use them in a way that's guided towards truth. That's called miraculous perception. And at the end of that learning journey is the transfer into knowledge. It's the restoration of knowledge once again. And when that happens, interestingly enough, prayer in the usual sense becomes utterly meaningless. There's nothing that you would want to ask for when we return fully and completely to knowledge, because we would already recognize that the nature of our being and of reality is so complete and full and rich. There's nothing missing. In summary of this, you must learn within A Course in Miracles to discern these three states. The separate state of confusion based on fear, false perception, and ego. The intermediate path of healing and returning back, called true perception or miraculous perception, still means we're in a world that needs a lot of help and a lot of healing, but we're being guided on the way back. And then finally, the third and original state, which becomes also the final state. It goes in a circle, goes back, a return to knowledge, a return to love. You must discern those three states of consciousness and realize when you're reading which state they're talking about. Otherwise, one is inclined to mix them up and be confused by them. And that does not induce peace. That induces a sense of uncertainty and doubt. Okay, in the meantime, keep praying. In the meantime, prayer is very useful while we're learning to forgive. Okay, I've reformatted this next paragraph in a way that I hope will be helpful. David?
Should I read it from the book or from the screen?
No, it's the same words. I haven't changed the words. I've just changed some sentence formats.
Okay. The statement, God created man in his own image and likeness, needs reinterpretation. Image can be understood as thought, and likeness as of a like quality. God did create spirit in his own thought, and of a quality like to his own. There is nothing else. Perception, on the other hand, is impossible without a belief in more and less. At every level, it involves selectivity. Perception is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, organizing and reorganizing, shifting and changing. Evaluation is an essential part of perception because judgments are necessary in order to select.
So this is perhaps one of the best descriptions of perception that exists in Course in Miracles. And by the way, modern neurology it has caught up to these definitions now and realizes that in a field of things that are moving, you select what to pay attention to and you ignore or reject other things. And then you identify the things you've selected in comparison to things you already know. So there, it's very fascinating how back when this was written, it was not as well understood. It is now. So, what can we take away from all this without getting lost in the details? That when you use perception, you're really comparing what you know with what you're encountering in the moment. You're making comparisons. And some of those things you will allow into your mind, like, I like that, or I agree with that. I find that true. Other things your mind will reject is I don't understand it, I don't like it, that can't be true. This happens all the time. What we will read about in section 3.7 is that when you reject those things, they go into your subconscious mind and are stored away as things you don't like. They're decisions. I don't like that. I don't understand that. I don't agree with that. And it becomes a part of your warehouse of things you have rejected in your life. And that is going to need some work if we're to be free. So, and we've been doing it our whole life without realizing it. So there's an accumulation of rejected ideas and people and situations that we carry around in our warehouse of our subconscious mind. And freedom will require that we go, that we empty out that warehouse. There's there's rats in there. Heather?
Yeah, I just saw the image of your picture with the hallway with the doors. And that door for me is called separation. And all these things are behind that door. They're all things that separate me. I like it, I don't. I like him, I don't. I like that, I don't. But but the name of that door for me is separation. And I want to clean that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. One more thing, a preview of section 3.7. This same method of perception that you use on the outside world, you use towards yourself. I like it. I don't. I accept it. I don't. So this is where judgment becomes a weapon. It's called weaponizing the judgments of your mind. And we can never live at peace as long as we use the tools of our mind as a weapon. We have to recognize the futility in attempting to defend ourselves or attack and defend, with the futility of that in order to live in peace. Richard?
Yeah, hey guys, back again. What I'm hearing is I can't deflate my ego with my own intelligence. I've got to, I can see this when I start off, I have an image of myself. And once I start losing that image, I want to, if I'm in a conversation with someone, I want to bring the conversation back to me, to what I already know. So what I'm doing is I'm reaching, I guess it would be egotistical ammunition to protect the image that I have of myself. It sounds convoluted, but it happens to me all the time. I can see it, but stopping it, I get lost, I fall asleep, meaning I forget what my intentions were to correct this
Right.
this particular image. It's almost like I'm trying to fix the problem with the tool that created it in the first place. It's the
Yes.
same tool.
Yes. You
So
got it.
all that's well, and I can win you. And if I run for election, I'm gonna vote for me. And oh yeah, I'm gonna be at the top of the, you know, it's oh, I don't know. I'm going crazy here.
It is a habit, Richard. You're so clear or right on that. We've practiced this habit to the point of addiction, and we can't use the same habit to free ourselves of it.
No,
We need help.
right. It's almost like a fear of separation from the image that I've created of myself.
Right.
I would be vulnerable if I say I don't know. That was the hardest thing I had to learn to say. And I want to know everything. I'm the jailer who's protecting the prisoner. He just stands there and watches, and the prisoner cannot leave that cell. And that's what's going on in this crazy man's head
All right.
every day.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go into the final few paragraphs here. David?
What happens to perceptions if there are no judgments and nothing but perfect equality? Perception becomes impossible. Truth can only be known. All of it is equally true, and knowing any part of it is to know all of it. Only perception involves partial awareness. Knowledge transcends the laws governing perception because partial knowledge is impossible. It is all one and has no separate parts. You who are really one with it need but know yourself, and your knowledge is complete. To know God's miracle is to know him.
Oh, we just had a huge time saver there in our journey back to knowledge, in that all you really need to know is yourself, and your knowledge is complete. Because if you know what God created, you know God, and that would be complete knowledge and understanding. And so in this way, Socrates, he said it right. You need to know yourself, not perceive yourself, but know yourself. And when you know that, your knowledge will be complete. At that point, perception becomes impossible. So the title of this section is Beyond Perception, which is knowledge, is beyond perception. Knowledge transcends the laws governing perception. It goes beyond that. It's a radically different state, not one that is taught here in time and space, but it is taught by the Holy Spirit. And the only way we can ever position ourselves to be ready to return the knowledge is through first acquiring miraculous perception. And that would be a state in which we are no longer afraid, in which we are entirely willing and gladly surrender all the images that we have of ourselves and others, and forgive all that nonsense, and empty out the warehouse of our grievances, those steps provide the conditions which are necessary for the return to knowledge. Let's go on.
Forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. Correct perception of your brother is necessary because minds have chosen to see themselves as separate. Spirit knows God completely. That is its miraculous power. The fact that each one has this power completely is a condition entirely alien to the world's thinking. The world believes that if anyone has everything, there is nothing left. But God's miracles are as total as his thoughts because they are his thoughts.
So now that you've heard these ideas, you understand that in God's knowledge, there is no separation. There was perfect union in the beginning. And that hasn't changed just because our minds have gotten confused and we are engaged in perception. So forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. Forgiveness undoes the notion that we were ever separate from God, which is to say, our spirit has never left. Our spirit is still knows God completely, is in a state of perfect oneness. It is only our minds that need this healing. Our minds is where we are doing the perceiving. That's the level at which the work needs to be done. And it certainly involves your own habits of thinking, but it must extend beyond yourself. Correct perception of your brother is necessary. Otherwise, it should be obvious that it's not adequate to see yourself as healed and see everyone else as broken and needy. It must extend. It's the nature of holy thoughts to continue to extend and be shared and so that others join in with them. I think this is our last paragraph, David.
As long as perception lasts, prayer has a place. Perception rests on lack. Those who perceive have not totally accepted the atonement and given themselves over to truth. Perception is based on a separated state, so that anyone who perceives at all needs healing. Communion, not prayer, is the natural state of those who know. God and his miracle are inseparable. How beautiful indeed are the thoughts of God who live in his light. Your worth is beyond perception because it is beyond doubt. Do not perceive yourself in different lights. Know yourself in the one light where the miracle that is you is perfectly clear.
Mm-hmm. So we are going to talk a lot more about accepting the atonement for yourself in future chapters. But know that perception is not the path to completely accepting the atonement. Why? Because perception rests on a basis of lack. Something's missing, something's wrong. And therefore, by perceiving, you cannot perceive something that is total and complete and whole and lacks nothing. You cannot perceive that because perception tells your mind things are lacking and missing and separate. So atonement can only be known, not perceived. And that's an indication atonement's at the end of the hallway and not in the beginning of the hallway along the way. We're working towards atonement, yes, but the total acceptance of it requires that we be able to go beyond perception, beyond the separated state, beyond healing. And so let's use a term that can refer to the state of consciousness where you're aware of those things. We'll call it communion. It's different from revelation and it's different from prayer. So let me just run through 3 states real quickly here. I should have come up with a slide, but it just occurred to me. Prayer, revelation, and communion. Prayer is me asking God, or I'm the one doing the talking. I'm the one asking for forgiveness. I'm the one humbly submitting myself to God. That's prayer. It's a good thing. As long as perception lasts, prayer has a place. Revelation is one-way communication from God to your mind. God's the one doing the talking. You're the one doing the listening and the receiving. And that's a wonderful thing. That's where you'll get glimpses of knowledge through revelation. Third term, communion, is often appears along with revelation to the same kind of mind that's prepared for a revelation. But communion is where things of similar nature get together and join as one. It's not it's not a form of information exchange as much it is of a state of sharing your being. It's a state of shared beingness. It's the natural state of knowing. Information is not needed to be exchanged because you know. So communion would be more lofty here and will require a degree of mind training so that you can set aside the monkey mind, what's sometimes called the monkey mind, the chatter, the contents of your subconscious, your narrative. You can learn to silence that activity so that you can enter into a quiet state where communion can occur. So it wasn't really intention to go deeply into all those things. We can do that more at another time, but it does seem natural to mention it right here. Noelle?
Those 4 lines from the bottom, those 3 lines, to me, solve the point that Richard made before when he said, if I give up my image or images, I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. So the next question is, well, what's left? Who am I that's left? And to me, these 3 lines answer that.
Mhm. Go on a little bit more, Noel. How is it they answer that? Because you can know yourself in the
Well, the second sentence, how beautiful indeed are the thoughts of God who live in his light. So for my images, I'm substituting a thought of God, and I live in his light. And also then there's the assurance that my worth is beyond my images now.
Right. Right. Indeed, they are. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. By the way, I think I've read these materials far more than 12 times. And they become a lot clearer as we learn and grow, go through the workbook lessons, experience that, actually go through the entire textbook and then come back. If you're on your first journey through, great. There's a lot here, but a deeper understanding may be elusive on the first journey through. It helps to know the end from the beginning for a more clarity as we go along. Susie?
Yeah, I'm just going to say this because you just said, if you're through your first journey, going through your first journey, or even your 10th journey, but this line in the second to the last paragraph, I mean, it just says it all. The fact that each one has this power completely is a condition entirely alien to the world's thinking. So, how that just tells me how different this training is and this information is to me, but very grateful and very hopeful. So that line just really jumped out at me.
Yeah. Thank you. So we only have a few minutes left. I want to do a quick, this would be some highlights that I want to remind you of that we encountered today. First of all, we're talking about the entire human race. There's a profound confusion between what God created you as and what you judge yourself to be. It's a fundamental confusion that results in an inescapable impasse whereby you continually ask yourself what it is you are. And by asking yourself, it ensures your entrapment. It ensures that you'll be the source of the answer, which is an inescapable impasse. What am I? And Susie, it says it, I found it. This becomes your most cherished idol, is asking yourself what you are and believing what it is that echoes back, which is me. And what echoes back is merely an image that you made, which you will never love and will ultimately discard as soon as you find a better one. So that's the trap of the human race. It becomes the most cherished idol. The truth is, and this was echoed by many people, including Richard's comment there, you cannot perceive yourself truly because your soul has no image to be perceived. And the hardest thing to do is to stop attempting to perceive your soul. And in fact, instead, pray. And the prayer of forgiveness is itself a request that you'd be able to recognize what's true about you, what's true that you already have and are. So can you see the difference from asking yourself what you are to turning to prayer for forgiveness and saying, God, here's what I thought I am, and I'm I'm glad to let that go. And in that process that you empty your mind, you now have room to receive from spirit the reassurance of what you truly are. That overcomes the inescapable impasse, is the prayer for forgiveness. So as long as we remain locked in this form of using perception, judgments are inherent in that. And what that means is that when any two situations come along, options, you'll select one and reject the other. The rejection gets stored away in the warehouse of your subconscious mind as something you don't like, something you don't care for, something that's not worthy of your love. Okay? So you got some shadow work going on in there, content. All right, what else? And then the Noelle's the line that she was so attracted to, the thoughts of God live in light. That's where knowledge exists. It's in light. It's not in the shadows of perception. The thoughts of God are beyond perception. They're beyond doubt. They're beyond judgment. And so that's where the Course is destined to take us, beyond perception. We've got a journey along the way before we can get there. It'd be great if we could just take a flying leap into knowledge and total acceptance of the atonement. But the truth is, we've got some unloading to do of all these images before we get there. And that's where the real work is unloading the images. Once all your false perceptions are gone, there is nothing that would stop you from embracing the thoughts of God in his light as a part of your true being. So that's as far as we're going to go today. I would encourage you to reread the material again. I encourage you either to attend the next two sessions or else read them on your own or watch the video preferably, so that you see the linkage between what we read today about using judgments about yourself and the next section, which is judgment and the authority problem, which will be described as the root of all evil, is thinking that you're the source of the truth, that you're the one to give the answer to these questions. It's an authority problem. And then finally, on the Monday, we'll reach the end of the chapter, and that's where the fireworks really go off. So I hope you can join us for that. David, I want to thank you for stepping up today and being our reader. So appreciate all that you do here. So appreciate everybody's comments and your eagerness to learn these things. We'll see you again soon. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jonica.
Love you all.
Thank you, David.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, David.
Bye.
This is
Love you
funny.
all.
Stay on.
Goodbye, Richie.
Bye, Richie.